the PowerShell space as long as I'm sure a lot of you have. I actually only really started learning PowerShell a couple years ago. But yeah, everyone keeps saying I'm like good at PowerShell, so I'm like, all right, I'll try and teach some people. And for a long time, that's kind of just what I did. I just effectively got on the subreddit and started trying to figure stuff out, and it took a while, but it's been fun. And basically, it's kind of ended up with me creating this module that aims to teach PowerShell to people, basically more or less from scratch. It does make some pretty basic assumptions. So if like you've never like seen a programming language before, it's a little bit tricky, but you could probably still do it. But yeah, so yeah, I think, what was it, like literally yesterday, everyone's like tweeting at me saying like, oh my gosh, you got the PowerShell Hero one. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a surprise. So I'm just going to get that out of the way before someone brings it up and surprises me again, because I still can't really believe it, but it's not a huge deal to me. It's a huge deal to everyone else, but I'm like, cool. Like it's great, but like it's on like such that level that I'm like, I don't even know how to really take that, but thanks basically. And yeah, so if you want to contact me after this, you can Slack, Discord, whatever. But I'm just going to pretty much jump in. This is going to be background noise. Hold on, let me see. 1 second, guys. If there's background noise, let me go ahead and turn off the fan. That might help a bit. There it is. Sorry, guys. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Background noise is a bit... I feel like I've heard a bit too, but I also just want to make sure I'm not contributing to that. But, sorry. Yeah, so we'll just basically... What we're going to do is we're going to go through some of my favorite topics in PSKoans, the module I was talking about. And if you guys want to jump in, chime in, and if you guys want to actually try and work through some of it with me, you can either follow along on like your own computer in your own terminals, or you can just kind of follow along with what I'm doing. And if you guys want to like just shout out stuff in the chat as we get to it, more than welcome to, because as basically, the more interactive this is, probably the better value you're going to get out of it. But at the same time, I'll also just try and explain things as we go. And I just want to show off a couple of the more interesting topics that I feel aren't really covered that well. But I can't really start without giving you a basic introduction. So this is the introductory topic. It basically explains what the module is about, how to do it. It's pretty simple. Most of it is fill in the blanks. There are a couple of exercises, and I'm aiming to add a lot more, where basically it gives you a target to hit, and it's like, write this function, do it. And then it'll test it for you, and then if you get it right, it'll be like, great. And if you don't, it'll be like, okay, this didn't work. And usually a little more detail as well, like, you know, this is missing, stuff like that. And here you can see it basically starting here. So this is just a very simple introductory one, just kind of showing you how the module works. It uses Pester as a framework. So if you're familiar with Pester, you'll know what this looks like. If you're not, it might be a little weird, but Pester syntax is pretty, what's the word? Declarative, I guess. It's like, hey, this is what we're describing. And then it's like, this is a test. And there'll be little comments, some of it flavor, some of it more helpful stuff. And then it'll give you an assertion, which is, you know, some value should be some other value. There are a few flavors of assertions we use, but usually it'll be like, this value should be this. And if you get it, and if it's wrong, it'll tell you exactly why. And so I'm just going to show you what this looks like when you first start it up. So this is the very basic, bland beginning, where everything just needs to be filled in more or less. And we're going to go right ahead, and the primary command you end up using with PSKoans is measure karma. It's basically a flavor thing that sort of takes back to the origin of the word koans. It comes from like Buddhist traditions, I believe, and it originally was used, I think the Ruby programmers started that little trend. Now there's a bunch of things that refer to themselves as koans, and this is one of them. They're all kind of learning-based modules. I've seen like regex, I've seen I actually learned F# through some koans, and yeah, so what you end up having is this prompt, which is half flavor, half actual grade information. So basically this will tell you the section of the file that matches your describe block, and then it will tell you things like, hey, this should have been the same string, but it wasn't. This is what was different. This is where it changed. What happened? And then it's like, this is exactly where you need to go. So basically, this is pulling out all of the error messages that you would otherwise get running this Pester test. And then it's like, this is what you need to look at. Look at this line, this file, and see what's up. And then it will have a little bit of flavor text. I think this was actually we're actually kind of lucky because I put a bunch of these in now, but this was the original one that I got from, I think, the original F# koans when I first learned F#. I actually pulled that one out of there because I thought it was kind of cute. And then it'll give you 2 progress bars in the current version. Earlier versions, there was just the one, but currently there are 2 progress bars. It will give you your current progress on the current topic that it's up to, and then it'll give you your total progress across the whole library, basically. The way that works is once one file is finished, it'll go test the next file. And it has a defined order, which you can actually see in the files here if I show you up here. See, it has a position value, and this is basically just an index value. It starts at 101. I don't remember exactly why I chose that, but it's basically, like the first lesson is like the 101 class type thing. Bit of a tongue-in-cheek there. But so it'll just increment the numbers as we go through the files. I am going to jump around a bit here, so we're not going to go completely in order. But that's kind of how it'll go when you're doing the module just straight up. It'll just be like, oh, you finished this file, we're going to go to this file. Go here next. So it'll take you through the whole thing.
Question?
Of course.
So when is it designed to be done in order, or is it, hey, I want to jump ahead and I can test ahead, so there's a mechanism, and then you probably will get to that, but there's the mechanism, but I'm just overall understanding the workflow, I guess that's what I'm asking about.
Yeah, fair enough. So there is a predefined order, which it will go through normally. If you do want to step outside that order, you absolutely can. Let me show you really quick here. If I just go ahead and, so this command is your basic one. If you want to pick a different topic, you can do it like this. And then I actually have to move this 1 second because I can't see, but there we go. So if you want to pick a different topic, you can actually tab complete through all the topic names. And you just pick which one you want to do. For example, if I go ahead and pick this one, sure, why not? It'll go ahead and test just that file for you. And that way you can step around, do whatever you want. This one actually only has two koans in it. And in that case, you'll actually only get the 1 progress bar, because that restricts it to searching just that one file. But that'll give you the progress in the file, and then if you want to jump somewhere else, you can do that. Or if you want to jump back to the regular progression, you just execute the same command without the parameter. The only thing you have to note with that is if you're jumping around doing stuff like that, when you run the regular command, like for example, say if you finish that file and then you ran the regular command again, if you weren't already up to that file in the progression, it might not count those in your total until you get up to that file, because it doesn't run everything all at once. It runs them in order until you get to the next one that's failing, basically. So it just kind of tries to save time that way. If you haven't done 5 files, it'll stop at the first one. Even if you've done the 6th, it won't recognize that till you get there again. But other than that, yeah, you can jump around as much as you like. That was actually a pretty recent addition. I think that came in 0.5, which is one of the more recent ones. But yeah, so that's available now. And the other thing I want to show you as well, real quick, if I go ahead and start filling out this file, I'm not going to explain too much yet because I want to show you something in particular. Let's say I really messed up this file. I just delete a line. Whoops, too bad, I guess. Oh dear, I'll have to fix that in a second. Give me a moment. But for example, I messed up that file, right? And then I want to go, I didn't want to do that, but I have other files that I finished. You can reset things. You can reset things as a whole, which is great. You can also just go ahead and reset just the one you want to reset. Yep, we'll do that. And then it will reset the file on its own. I put that in because basically there were a few cases during the updates where if you started on one version and then you upgraded the version, then some things would break in a small way, and it was kind of annoying. So I was like, let me just put a thing in so you can reset whichever file you're working on, whatever, as you go, or just everything at once if you like. But yeah, so that's there if you need it. But yeah, so we're just going to run it bland from the start, and I'll show you where we go with this. All right, let's run that one more time. Okay, so we're given a problem statement. Basically, we expected the same string. Whoops. There's a placeholder here. We didn't fill it in. Okay. And what we're looking at is the it's labeled it as a simple comparison, and that's on line 27 of this file right here. And VS Code is nice. You can just click on that file. It'll take you right to it, which is fantastic. So I'm actually really happy with VS Code and how it works with this module. A lot of it was accidental though. A lot of it's just VS Code being helpful, and I'm like, oh, that works really well. Awesome. But yeah, so then we're looking at this file. We're looking at line 27. Okay. So we got this one wrong. Oh dear. These strings should be the same, basically, is what this assertion is saying. So you fill this in, and you save it. And I have to fix that setting because VS Code is being very, very annoying. Hold on one second. Okay, pipeline. Yeah, there you are. Okay, that setting is bugged, and I forgot about that. There we go. And, okay. Format document. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Now it's better. Yeah, there's a bug setting in VS Code. It'll get fixed eventually. But then once we've done that, if we go ahead and enter the command again, it'll recognize that we completed the test, and it will take us to the next one. It'll put you at the next one if you're not sure where it is. But yeah, so there we go. And oh look, we're at the next one. So this one expected 3, but we didn't get anything. And that is on line 32. So we go through these just like this. So 1 plus 2 should be 3. And then this one is something plus 5 should equal 10, should be true. So 5 plus 5, if I can type. And basically that's what a lot of this is. It's filling it in, solving the problem, and obviously these are the basic ones because it's the intro. 1 plus 2 should be 3, and like that. So there'll be some where it does a direct comparison and then lets you know if it should be true or false. Some things it'll just be like, hey, this value should be this value. And then if we go ahead and do that again, this file should be complete, and then it will go ahead and show. There we go. Takes a couple moments. There we go. And then our progress bars look reset because basically this one's too small. We have 4 out of almost 300, but it's too small to see on this bar. So it's telling us to go to the next file here about variables. We're going to skip that for now because that is the normal progression, but I want to skip around and show you guys a few things that I find are a little more interesting and that a lot of people don't actually know starting in PowerShell. You will get to these pretty soon. This is still in the foundations, but and yeah, just so you're aware, this is all organized by folder as well. Typically, basically everything in one folder will end up being completed before you get to the next folder if you're doing it in the natural defined order of it. So like we start at foundations, and then I think it goes into the commandlets 1, and then it dips into constructs and patterns and goes back to commandlets 2, and there's a few other things here and there that do get interspersed, but by and large, it's trying to teach both, Ryan. So it's mainly trying to teach the concepts of PowerShell, but it works in a framework of Pester. So you could learn Pester through this, but ultimately it's mainly just about learning PowerShell. And there's actually, what's his name? Shane is currently working on, for example, a DBA tools flavored variant of this. So he's working on basically a side branch of this, still working in Pester to teach people how to use DBA tools. Which is fantastic, and it's still like a heavy work in progress, but what I'm seeing looks great. And I mean, honestly, if anyone wants to has a favorite module and wants to write some of these for it so people can learn how to use the module, go for it. Totally open to it. It would be awesome. And obviously there's some that I will get to. But there's some things like Pester. I know a fair bit of Pester. I don't know everything, and I definitely don't know a lot of the really, really deep and really powerful things that it can do. So I'd probably have to work with Jakob, who's actually working on Pester, to actually figure a lot of that out to then write those koans, which I probably will do. But there's a lot to cover in PowerShell, so I'm working on what I can and what I know first, and then I'm gonna go ahead and delve into more territory that I don't know so well.
Related to that, is if you wanted to develop koans for that, there's a framework for it, right? It's probably.
It's still getting filled in, but basically yes, that's going to be there. So currently.
Directly.
What was that?
Someone can reach out to you directly about understanding or getting that framework or understanding some of that framework.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, essentially you would copy this. Like this is what defines a koan file. Basically, you put this in, and then there's an additional one that you would put in for a custom module. You'd be like, yeah, this module is actually like, you know, this might be DBA tools or whatever. And then basically this would cause it to get sorted out of the typical koan progression. I would still package it with the module if you wanted to, and then basically you would, when you're running the measure karma command, you would select like, hey, I want to work on this module instead of the standard module, and it would go through that progression in that module. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of how that's going to work. It's mostly in place. There's still a couple things that have to line up, but it's mostly there. But yeah, so I want to show you guys the functions and script blocks topic. A lot of the time, functions in PowerShell are weird, like really weird compared to a lot of programming languages. Like C# is very, very strict and stringent. PowerShell has a couple different ways of doing it, and some of it is really wild. Like you can literally pipeline into a basic script block, not even have a function. It can do some very strange things. But yeah, so I want to show you this one real quickly. Basically, this is just a bit of a flavor text saying, hey, use the verb noun syntax because it makes your code more consistent and easier to read for anyone who's used to PowerShell, and it just makes it work better because you end up writing better names for your commands. That framework exists just basically because if you have a verb and a noun, you know exactly what that command does, as long as you stick to what you're naming it, of course. Like if you write, you know, get user and you end up like deleting a user in that command, that's obviously no good. But beyond that, like as long as you're doing what your command says, you oftentimes don't have to write as much documentation to explain it. Because you can be like, okay, it's pretty basic to assume that a function called get user is going to get you a user. So maybe the documentation could tell you where it looks, if you can filter, stuff like that, and any parameters that it has. But the basics of the function come in the name. So it's really handy like that. And then this one just basically teaches you the different ways you can get output from a function. So this one, for example, uses the explicit write output. I know Mark Krauss doesn't like that very much, and he has his reasons, but it's still a way to go, and it still works. So I include there's some stuff that's controversial here and there, but beyond there, like I include what works, and I try and also display best practices as much as I can in these koans. So like if there's a certain way something's written, I'll usually explain it, and if there's like a wrong way to do it, so to speak, or like a way that might cause you trouble later, I'll usually be like, hey, try not to do this, sort of thing, like point it out. But this one, yeah, so this one's pretty simple. This get number function just writes both 20 and 42 to output, and that's basically all it does. And as mentioned, write output doesn't exit the function. It's not like return from some other languages where it exits the function. But this one here, get return number, instead, this one has to be filled in. We haven't found what actually needs to be filled in yet, but this will have to be filled in a minute. We'll see. And as mentioned, the return statement, you actually write it to output what you're returning, just like other languages, but then it exits. And there's a bit of a caveat there I might mention in a moment. And then this one is just literally, PowerShell is kind of like a functional language sometimes. You can just drop something on a line, and as long as it's not, you know, going to be considered part of a pipeline or like or it's not going to be captured by something, it will just get dropped straight to output. For example, in this function, you're writing 12. It's just 12. PowerShell just kind of knows like, hey, I want this output, and it sends it straight to output, which is very unlike a lot of more strict languages, but it's very like a lot of functional languages. So I like to say PowerShell is kind of halfway between your like object-oriented stuff like C# and then like your functional programming languages like F# and things like that. F# is a favorite of mine because it's like the one I learned first, and still the only functional language that makes any sense to me. They're very, very difficult to work with sometimes. But for example, this one here, we've got our get number function, and this should be equal to the output from get number. So get number does this. It writes two things to output, which is 20 and 42. So in this case, you would just go right ahead and be like, okay, so this is 20 and 42. And in this case, I know that this is going to be 20 and 42 in an array. Parentheses and @ symbol technically not needed, but that's one way to do it. And then the get return number, it should be 13. Okay, so that was the one that had a blank in it. We're going to have to go back up, put 13 in here. how that goes. And then this one should just be 12. Now that first one actually might trip a few new people up who don't know that this is going to give you an array, just because you're outputting two different things 2 different times. I'm not sure what the assumption would be there for a lot of people, but I have heard of a few people who thought it was just going to be like added on or something, like, 20 plus 42, that's 62, right? Not so much. PowerShell makes arrays very loosely, I guess you could say. There are a lot of cases where it was like, this is an array, sure, why not? And then there's a few other ways you can write functions. So this one is you can have parameters, or you can just use the args variable. That's not used that much in PowerShell, but it's available if you need it. I tend not to use it myself. Like maybe in like a quick thing in the console I'll use it, but beyond that, I don't like args very much. It's a very opaque way to say I'm using some input, because it doesn't describe anything about what the input is. It's just like, this is the first piece of input, this is the second piece of input. Could be anything, who knows? But functions still work like that. So if you want to do that, you can do that. Hey, let's add things. We'll add 7, and let's add a 2. This is cheating a bit, but we'll make it a string. So yeah, if you add strings, you actually concatenate them. Some languages have very particular in how you can actually concatenate strings, but PowerShell, you add them together, they're together. That's all it really cares about. And you have things like this, and then if you want to add numbers, they're going to add up to 3, and that's just illustrating the different object types can be, well, react differently to the addition operator. Strings, you add one string to another, you just join them together. Numbers, obviously, you actually sum them. And then this is another way of writing a function, which is a little closer to how C# methods look. You have the function name, and then you have just in brackets your parentheses, your arguments. Parentheses, brackets. I interchange a lot. Sorry. And then this one does basically the same thing as the previous function, just it actually names its arguments. And then this one, for example, again, you add numbers 1, 7, so you get 9. And then you add something to 15 to get 31. So that's going to be 16 if I do my math right. I think so. And then, yeah, and then it just shows you that you can explicitly parse arguments by names as well, which is pretty important for a lot of PowerShell commandlets, because they have so many options. You will never keep track trying to pass everything positionally, as it's called. So if we go ahead and check where we're at here, so basically, yeah, you can just run through a file, do whatever you can recognize, and then if you're not sure where to go or what's expected next, you can just run the command again and be like, hey, where am I at, kind of thing. This should take us right here. So there we go. Let's see, variable assignments is damage or karma. Oh, never mind. I have to specify the topic. So in this case, we're working on this specific file, so we're going to specify the topic. That one right there. And these all tab complete as well. So if you're not sure about the exact spelling or something, just kind of start writing it and tab complete through it. It's a lot simpler than trying to get all the long names I put in here, but so tab complete's there for you. And so this one here mentions how you can use the param block to actually declare your parameters, which is a much more effective way to go. And so yeah, this one just measures how long the string is. And for any of you keeping track at home, yes, that is an approved verb. There are a bunch of them, but I make sure every single time, because I always end up wanting to use a verb that's not like in the approved list or whatever. So I always double check it. So this one should be 6. And then this one's just asking how long is this string, basically. So this number should be equal to the value from measuring the string, which is going to give us the length here in this function here. So if we see that is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters long. So that should be 7 if I can count. I hope I can count. Let's see. And yeah, so we're up to 2 out of 4. There you go. And these little quotes change. They're just flavor text, but I like them a bit, so I put them in. So where are we? Describing functions. Should expected 8, but got 9. Where was that? Did I mess up here somewhere? I probably did. 8, 12, expected 8, but got 9. No, where was it? What line is this? 72. 72, this one here. Oh, okay, there you go. That one needed to be, oh wait. Oh, no, that was 1, 7, and I put in 9. Okay, I just can't quite add up there yet. There we go. So yeah, it'll let you know if you mess up, and and it'll give you the exact line to look at too. So if you mess up, you'll know exactly what you messed up most of the time, unless you really break the structure of the file, in which case the reset's there to help you too. Thanks, Justin. And yeah, so then we're up to 3 out of 4 for this file, and we're looking at line 125. Let's see, scroll down a bit. So we got the measure string bit, and we're looking at script blocks specifically. Basically, a good way to think of script blocks is it's just a function, but we haven't given it a name. And yeah, script blocks can be helped a lot of different ways. There's also a mention to an additional help topic here, which there is actually an about script blocks help topic. Joshua, you can actually install this from the PowerShell gallery. The command to do that is literally just install module, PSKoans, and most of the time you'll just want it under current user scope, but you can install it system-wide if you like, it doesn't matter. But yeah, you can just install it like that. Very straightforward. Just from a regular PowerShell thing. So basically, yeah, so a script block is a function without a name. A lot of functional languages like to call those anonymous functions. C#, you'll sometimes hear them called lambdas, just because of how they tend to look and how they tend to behave. And I believe that has roots in some theoretical math stuff as well, but I'm not going to go into that. That's a little over my head as much as I love math. But yeah, so this script here literally just throws an error using the throw keyword. So if you were to actually, this just stores it. This doesn't run it. If you were to run it, you would see an error. And then this script here actually just, so currently this will just output this other script block as an object. And then it's like, try appending invoke to cause the original block to be executed. So basically, this one here was telling us that there should have been an exception, because that's what we were expecting with the should throw assertion. So basically, should throw will actually run the script block you give it, and it's not run until it hits should. So should can actually like see what's going on, see if there was an error or not. And in this case, this one's like, hey, there should have been an error on this one, but there wasn't, and that's because we didn't actually run this one. There are a couple ways to do this. This one recommends the invoke method, which works very well. There are like 3 or 4 different invoke methods. I'm not going to go into the details there. It's a little bit lower level, but you can explore them if you like. There's documentation on all of that, of course. All of the PowerShell types have their documentation. If you want to Google the type name, for example, like if you want to look up script block, it'll actually tell you, or it should. No, really? Oh, because script block is a type. Hold on. So if I do script block full name, it will tell you exactly where it is, which is this one right here. And if you were to Google that type name, you would get all the information about it, all the methods, all the properties you can find on it, and one of these is invoke. The other method you can use is, instead of this, you can actually use the invocation operator, which is not really mentioned in this particular part of the koans, but it is also available. In this case, we'll just stick with what it recommends, and we'll see how that works. So basically, this one, it should have thrown an error, but it didn't. So when we invoke it, and we actually test that again, it will throw an error, and it will let us pass. Go through. Oh, looks like I messed up on that one. Okay, that's something for me to fix later. All right, let me get a screenshot of that real quick, because that's got to get fixed on the gallery soon. Okie dokie, there we go. All right, there we go, I'll fix that later. Clearly, I haven't had too many cases where I've actually finished files all the time, because, yeah, oh, 4 out of 0. Okay, I see what that is. All right, no worries. And then, book recommendation, because that one looks like fun. But yeah, so that's this file. And if we want to go ahead to the next one I have lined up, we are going to look at actual comparison operators. These are pretty basic bread and butter things in PowerShell. Let's have a look. So topic about comparison. Nope, there we go. So you have a bunch of pretty standard comparison operators. And they work in some of the ways you'd expect, but not all the ways you'd expect. And actually, you'll see in this file there are a few that pass automatically. That might be intended. I honestly cannot recall right this minute. I'll have to have a look into that. But, so, we'll start off with basically your standard equals and not equals operators. Operators in PowerShell are a bit funky compared to a lot of other languages. A lot of languages love to just be like very symbolic with it. JavaScript is famous for its like, this definitely equals that, triple equals sign, and yeah. but yeah, so PowerShell loves its more verbose operators. This equals, this does not equal. And so these ones here, true equals false, should definitely be false. I hope so. If not, something's really broken because you can't change those variables if you tried. But yeah, so this one equals 1, this should also be true. There you go. And that one should get sorted. And then this one will actually attempt to convert types. A lot of other languages that some people know are very, very strict about what types you can actually compare directly and what those comparisons result in. JavaScript, for example, is very extremely loose with its comparisons. You can compare arrays to like numbers and strings all over the place as much as you like, and you get some kind of weird results. PowerShell is more sensible, but it can still do some conversions, and there are a couple of cases which will trip some people up if they're not expecting them. But yeah, so it will attempt to convert types. So for example, 0 or 1. So if you try to compare true to 1, you'll get true because anything other than 0 basically is considered true. Pretty straightforward. Because your Boolean 0 is false and your Boolean 1 is true, but then anything above that is just like, well, it's over 0, so it's true, effectively, is kind of how that rolls. And then if you've got false does not equal 0, well, false, if you actually convert these two, you will end up getting a false does not equal false statement, because 0 will convert to false. Important thing I probably should mention here is that it converts to the left-hand side. So if you're doing like 1 equals true, that true gets converted to 1. If you're doing false does not equal 0, that 0 is the one that actually gets converted because it's on the right-hand side. But you don't run into it too much, but occasionally you will. So I should probably actually make a note to add that in as well. But yeah, so here we go. So this one, some value should be true equals 10. So will that give us true? I actually just mentioned, yes, it will give us true. There we go. And this one, so what about negative numbers? And surprisingly, negative numbers are not false. That's surprising to me personally. So minus 10 equals false. That will get us a false response because even negative numbers are actually truthy, I believe. I'm just going to double check myself on that because it's been a while since I had to actually test that. Bool's negative 10, yeah, it's true. So if you cast them to Boolean, you can see what the expected results are, but basically the rule is if it's not 0, it's true. For numbers, that is. There's some fun rules for other things too. Negative numbers, yeah. So this one should be 10 does not equal 1. Yep, that'll be true, I'm sure. Okay, and I see where all the things that are passing here by accident come from. Okay, and then strings and numbers get converted as well. So if you're trying to compare a string to a number, and that string happens to look kind of like a number, and it's on the right-hand side, you'll actually get it converted. So like this one here, 10 does not equal 10. Those are different types, sure. Like this one's a string, that's a number, but yeah, you can absolutely just compare those things and it will give you, so if you tried to say this was equal to this, that'd be true, but it's not equal, so we're going to get false, which is a little wild, but hey, it's very convenient sometimes, especially if you're taking like input from an actual like user, and that input just comes in, for example, read host always gets you strings. But if you want to compare that to some expected value, you can oftentimes in PowerShell just do the comparison and it'll figure it out. Like if it's meant to be a certain number, and you like have to compare like is the number they entered like greater than 4 or whatever, it'll just do it. You don't have to do any conversion yourself. The operators kind of do that for you, which is great. And it's also a little difficult to work with at times when you don't want that. So you got to be a little careful, but yeah, by and large, it's pretty helpful. And then this one, strings, yes. So you can compare a string to 1, and it's not going to work out because that 1 is not going to end up the same as that string. It'll still convert to string, but those strings aren't going to be the same. As for strings and Boolean casts, they're a bit fun. So strings, hello equals true. Let's test that, shall we? So if we go, for example, Boolean, and we just want to go hello, how does that actually cast if we cast that? It's true. Actually, is if there's anything in the string, if it's anything other than the empty string, which is just like open close quote, then it will be true. So there's a few things like that, which is kind of fun. That'll be true. This one here, an empty string, like I mentioned, is actually going to be false because there's nothing in it. And a string containing a number, I'm going to have to double check myself on this one. I think, because it's been a while since I wrote this, I always write these checking documentation, but if I run into this, I got to check it again all the time. So let's see, something should be, so false does not equal 0. Now, how would that actually compare? I believe that will still try to do the basic string comparison. That won't convert to number first. It won't do a double-step conversion. It'll just do the straight conversion to Boolean, and that should still end up as true. If I'm wrong, we'll see in a sec. But I'm pretty sure I'm right on that one. So strings don't care about the contents when cast to Boolean. So, for example, true equals false. This false string will still end up being cast to Boolean the same way, even though it says false. It's still just going to get a very, very straight cast. You can actually properly process strings like that and get a proper Boolean value, but it won't happen with casting. You have to explicitly do it like, let's do this. There you go. Let's actually pass this. Bool parse false gets you a false, but if you actually just cast that, it doesn't do the same thing. Yeah, it's true because there's some characters in the string. It's the casting behavior is not gonna check the contents of the string. You have to ask for that specifically. So this one is false equals string false. Let's see, that's a confusing one, but that result is going to be false because that string of false is going to end up representing true in the Boolean. That's a bit of a doozy, but there you go. String false should be just false. And if we go ahead and go back to a measure karma here, we should be able to see that particular one there passed, and we should be up to changing behavior with arrays. I think, yes, we are. Perfect. Okay. So, here we go. The array must always be on the left-hand side of the comparison. So this one here, expected 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 4, 6, 5. Right. Okay. So this should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So yeah, so this one here is a bit of a tricky one, but basically, if you're actually going to do a straight comparison operator with an array, it'll do a bit of a filtering trick. It's almost like if you're used to C# link expressions, where you're like, get me everything that is equal to 2 or something. And it will go through and pick out the values that are actually equal to 2. So in this case, this one is 2 because it goes through and picks out just the 2. And if you try and pick out something that's not in there, you actually get a null value back. And then this one there, array does not equal 5. Huh. Okay. So this one's saying it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which is all the values, but it got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So we skipped the 5 because we filtered out the 5 here. So in this example, for example, if I just go, if it doesn't equal 0, pass it through, it will go ahead and pass that test there. Let's see how that goes. There we go, and we're up to, it will compare values, line 75. Okay, so that passed. There you go. So yeah, there are a couple of things like this where it's not immediately obvious, but if you actually examine the output, it gives you like, hey, we got this, but we were looking for this. It'll let you know exactly what happened. If you just examine that and check the code again, it'll usually within a few minutes. Some things do take a bit longer to figure. There's a couple challenges in there that are a little bit more extensive, I'm not going to lie, but yeah, a bit of headbanging, you'll get there, even if you're not very used to PowerShell, for sure. So this one here, we're working with the greater than and less than operators now. Obviously, your standard stuff. We need something that's greater than 14 to make that true, so let's go with very bland and boring 15. Let's see, you guys know anything less than 0? There we go. Okay. Let's see, we'll often return many items from arrays. So if you try and look for anything that's greater than 30, you'll get null. And if you want to look for everything less than 10, you'll actually get 1 and 10. There are a couple of these where it's just literally just illustrating the concept. I should probably actually change a couple of these, add an extra one in there, but we'll get to that. This is still, like, this module isn't perfect. It's still a lot to work on. There's still some topics that are literally just placeholders for now until I actually get to them. So if anyone actually wants to come write some, you're more than welcome, because it's a lot of work. Actually, writing like a single file doesn't take that long, but the amount of topics to cover in PowerShell is pretty extensive. So, yeah. And then we're looking at the greater than or equals, and less than or equals. Okay, so it's basically just, yep, this is the above two in one package, basically. So we're talking, all right, so we've got array greater than or equal to 3 gives us 3, 4, 5. Less than or equal to 2 gives us 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it doesn't. That's not right. What do we got to add it here? So less than or equal to 2 would not give us that, but what will give us that? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Less than or equal to 4 will give us that value. Should be. And then this one, we're looking for array greater than or equal to 5. So anything that is 5 or above in this array, which in this case is just 5. Okay, and I think that should get us there, and if we go test it, we should be up to contains and not contains, unless I missed something, which is very possible. But yeah, if you guys would like, you can actually just, like, we might go to a couple, and I'll pull up this, like, depending on, I'm not sure, like, what everyone's skill level is here, obviously. This is still kind of the basics, but if you want to try out some as we go, and you don't want to just follow along, you can just, like, shout out in the chat, be like, hey, this is this, as you see it, if you like. I don't really mind either way, we can just go through. But if you guys want to have a little more fun and try and see if you can get some of these, more than welcome. Let's see, so we're up to, oh, we expected 110, but got 15. Okay, this is in, it will often return many items from arrays, so I missed something. Line 85, okay, so line 85 is up here. There we go. So array less than 10 should be, oh, I've got 110. Okay. So in fact,
can I ask a question?
Go for it.
Like when you're building this, some of the facts that you're using, are you just pulling it from scratch, or are you getting it from like a training document or that kind of stuff, or where are some of these coming from, or that? Like,
got you. A lot of these are stuff that I would just like mock together examples in terms of like what actually to cover. A lot of them I will cover from what I know and have stumbled across myself, or I will a lot of the time I will actually go ahead and pull up the PowerShell help for that particular document, for this particular topic or whatever. So like comparison operators, I think that actually, if I just quickly check, I think there's an about comparison or something like that in the help there. Let me see, about comparison. Nope. That's actually a help topic, about comparison. There you go. Oh no, it just gave me all of them. That's weird. I didn't remember doing that before. You should give me a list. But anyways, so there you go. So this one, yes, we've got match operators. There's a bunch of topics here that will get you those. So if you just like literally search the get help, you have, hey look, we have about comparison operators, and a lot of this you can find with Google as well, because these are online documents as well. Anyway, yeah, so let's clear that away. But yeah, so some of it is, I went and looked up the documentation, and I went through from top to bottom, and I was like, this needs to be covered, this can be confusing, this should be covered. Some of it is, when I first started learning PowerShell, I was on the subreddit for like 6 to 8 months picking it up, and seeing like so many people just stumble over the same stuff over and over again. I'll be like, okay, I've seen this before, I can explain this to this person, like after like the 4th time basically. And then I'd like come back here and be like, oh, I remember when like literally everyone was stumbling over this particular issue, let me put that in, kind of thing. So like this stuff with arrays, it comes up like every 2-3 weeks on the PowerShell subreddit. It's like, hey, why is this doing this? I didn't ask for this. And someone has to go, okay, you're comparing against an array. You might even realize you actually have an array that you're comparing against. You expected one thing, and you have another problem where you accidentally captured too much output. And then they're like, why is it giving me this weird value, or why isn't it giving me anything when I know it should be giving me this? And so there's like issues like that which tend to come up in the community that I'm like, oh, okay, that needs to get covered, because it's the thing that a lot of new people trip over. Because it's not immediately obvious. Like if you're testing just a straight, hey, is this greater than or equal to this? You're not usually expecting different behavior from arrays, and sometimes you're not even realizing you have an array, so it's even more confusing. So like stuff like this, I'm like, hey, this is how this behaves. So hopefully when you come across it later, you can be like, oh, I've seen this, I know why this might be happening, I can go check out like why I have an array here for some reason when I shouldn't, kind of deal. Like for example, this one here, we've asked for stuff that's greater than 30. It's actually going to get us null because there's nothing in the array there. But if you had if you were expecting a particular single item to get output, and then suddenly you have an array because some output from somewhere bled in and you weren't sure where it came from, you didn't realize it was happening, and then you tried to do a straight comparison and you got nothing back, you'd be like, what? But if you're aware that it behaves that way with arrays, you'd be like, oh, something else is in there that's messing this up a bit, kind of thing. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, so we're up to actually, where are we up to? Let's see. Topic. What was it about? Comparison. There we go. Nope, wrong one. Whoopsie. No. Okay. About comparison. There we go. So I've completed the right one here. Okay. There we go. All right. So. Right. I was up to actually here, which is the 110. This one here. So we have, should be, what was it? Got 1.5, expected 110. Okay. So this one here looks like 1.510. Less than 10 gives us 1.5. Yes. Huh. So I guess we should, just be looking for 1.5 there. Okay. So yeah, a lot of these I wrote months ago. So some of them I'm like, did I mean that one? Yeah, okay. There you go. So it takes me a bit to remember.
Kind of related question about, when, do you get common questions about, hey, I want to really understand some of this other stuff, and so you go and do that, or some of these are, you kind of mentioned a derivative of questions in Reddit and all that kind of stuff. But almost, I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to ask is that, do you get questions about this particular content that comes from there?
Yeah, quite a bit. So, well, I mean, you mean about the module specifically, or?
Yeah, that, thinking that, what are the common questions that people ask, about PSKoans, is it when you get asked questions, is it about the content, or is it how to use it, or that kind of thing? When people are asking about koans.
Got you. I haven't got too many questions asking how to use it. There have been a couple people just literally starting at PowerShell, how the heck do I install this thing? And it's fairly straightforward, but yeah. So I'll get a couple questions like that because it's it's a module aimed at beginners, so fair question. And then but beyond how to use it, not so much. I do get questions about the content and hey, this part's confusing me sort of stuff every now and again. I don't get a whole lot of it, but I do get some of it. Every now and again, someone will pop up in it will just crop up in the Discord or in the Reddit or whatever. Every now and again, someone will find the link to the GitHub and actually just put an issue, be like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. What am I missing or whatever. Some of those it's just I've done kind of all I can, and then I can kind of explain it more as they come ask the question. Or some of it is just hey, I actually explained this really terribly. Let me go back and fix that one as well as explain it and stuff. So sometimes it's the stuff that I should have done better, and then sometimes it's just stuff that just needs a longer explanation for that particular person because it didn't quite make sense the way I wanted to say it and the way it probably needed to be said for maybe most people. Who knows? Does that answer the question?
And if you make some of those changes, it's going to reset the entire module, and so you have to redo it all, correct?
Kind of. So how the module works is it has a base set of koans in the unaltered state that it keeps around, and when you actually go through the module, it will direct you to actually edit a copy of that. So if I then went back and updated that file, and you wanted to get the updated file, you would be able to reset just that one file, so you don't lose all your progress. You reset that one file. You can go in and copy it beforehand as well, so you have the progress you have, and then you can just compare the old file to the new file that it resets it to, and fill in anything that it removed, and then just go from there on whatever that it was going with.
Is there a document that says how to walk through that process, or is it you just need to know?
it is mentioned in the actual help, I believe. 1 second, let me show you real quick. Let's see. I can't find that fine. And then if we look at the this one, for example, this one, by default you use the topic parameter like I've been using, and it will just give you the koans from that specific topic. And then it mentions if you combine it with reset, it actually just resets those individual topics. There isn't like a full-on document explaining the whole process. I can definitely add one if you feel like it's needed. 100%, wouldn't mind.
Well, I think what I'm trying to get into is that if I go through and go through most of it, and then there's like you said, hey, there's a change, and I could do an update module, and where does that, if something changes, my copy is slightly different than the underlying copy.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of that dynamic, and it's pretty much like an advanced topic at this point, but
No, you're good.
Just understand.
Yeah, so you can definitely end up with you end up with like a slightly older copy of the koans and all that sort of stuff. I usually mention when I'm like, hey, there's an update. I'll usually mention if you have like an old version or whatever, you can because I'll know when I'm actually uploading an update, I'll know if there's been changes to the actual koans, or if it was just the module itself, the internal functionality. So if there's something that actually got updated in one of the koans, I'll mention, hey, you should either reset this one, or just hey, FYI, if you want to get the updated one, you should run this command, and I'll usually mention it again, sort of thing.
So effectively, when I'm doing the koan, it's a copy of what is there.
Yes.
And so then, if you do an update to the underlying thing, my copy will not get over, and it'll be still.
No,
I'm not understanding the whole structure. That's
I got you. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So you can see here we're actually in my user folder, and there's a PSKoans folder here. The module makes that in your user folder. That's just how it works basically. It will go ahead and make this folder, and then it keeps its own copy separate. So if so that you can reset it if you need it. So if you update the module, it's not going to reset anything unless you actually ask it to, which is probably for the better.
Actually, I don't think we talked about that. Is to do the full install. It's install from the gallery, PSKoans, and then where does the PSKoans folder come from then?
It's actually when you first run Measure Karma, initially after a fresh install of the module and nothing else, it will actually detect that there's no folder there, and it will just create one for you.
In the current folder. So
no, it defaults to the user folder, but you can actually change that if you go set. Yeah, typing that one. You can actually change where it's set to.
So you can define the koans, and then you can do koan version 2, version 3, 4.
Yeah, if you want to, absolutely. Yep.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. That way, I know I'm not going to do the breaking change or
of course.
My version and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that shouldn't be too much of an issue most of the time now. I had a couple rehashings of where, for example, I was changing how this was done. I think the original version did a requires module statement or whatever, and I had to change it twice, and it was really annoying. But that's pretty much set in stone now, so it's not going to change anymore. And that was really the main thing that actually broke things. But that out of the way, it's pretty stable just to keep it as is. What else ran? But yeah. So if you need to change location, if you need to maintain multiple folders, you can absolutely. The only thing I still need to work in with that I haven't got to yet is that command there. It is still only affecting your current PowerShell session. So if you draw up 5 folders and then you leave it set to the last one, next time you start up PowerShell, it's going to be back at the first one. You have to set it again. I need to put something internally in there so it can save the config to disk or something like that I need to get going. But beyond that, yeah, it's just a file path. So yeah, pretty much. And you can actually just check it before you do anything. Hey, where is this? And it will tell you, and you can set it as you need. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah, so let's see. This is one of the more, returns true if the right-hand value occurs in the left-hand array. Yeah. So we're looking at our contains comparison operators now. These are great for, if you have a whole bunch of items and you just need to see if the one you're looking for is in there anywhere. I don't care where, is it in there, basically. So for example, we're looking for any value that is in that array. So this array should contain whatever this value is. Currently it's nothing. And yeah, so if we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so any of these will work. There's multiple answers here. It doesn't really matter that much, but yeah, it's just like illustrating the concept pretty much, which is a lot of these. Let's see, always return false with an array on the right-hand side. Yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah, a lot of the comparison operators, including contains, if you try and put an array on the right-hand side of them, they don't behave well. Like if you say like 1 equals this array 1, 2, it's going to give you false no matter what the left-hand side is, because arrays is a little more of an advanced thing, but arrays are reference objects. Unless you literally compare it with the exact same instance of that array, it will always be false. Complex objects don't compare evenly. You usually have to compare properties and stuff like that, which gets a little messier, but we'll get there. This one here. So this one will always, so yeah, value contains array. That's definitely going to be false. And this one is array contains 1, 2. So yeah, technically, this array kind of is in that array, but that's not how the contains operator works. It can only look for a single value. Like it will look for example, 1, 2 in one element of this array, or in each rather. So even though the numbers 1 and 2 are both in there, it's not going to look for each of those individually. It's going to look for that whole item in there, and it's not going to be in there. So it's pretty much always going to be false unless you're doing some really strange things. It's possible to make that true, which is very tricky. Yeah. So this one, yep.
So kind of now you're kind of going into individual things. This is partly, there's no right answer either. It's like I looked at this and I'm like, oh, I could have just added something else to the array or something like that.
Yes, you could.
I would have solved it a different way.
Yeah.
Like, that's just my thoughts, and so it's just it's possible, or it's kind of showing potential roadblocks, and then you just try and solve the roadblock whatever way you can.
Absolutely.
Like to validate the roadblock.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a way that I like to solve it, and that's somewhat how I've written. I've tried to make it like sort of as straightforward as possible, but there are definitely other ways to do it. And honestly, if you can find another way to do it that still works, you probably understand the topic well enough to pass it anyway. So it's not the sort of thing you would really solve by accident a lot of the time. So if you're solving it, you're probably learning it, more or less. Yeah.
But that's it's part of the lesson is that it's not about, hey, do it this way. It's about, here's a potential roadblock, and then so long as you get beyond the roadblock, then
exactly
that you understand the concept enough to get yourself around the roadblock.
Exactly, yeah. The Pester just tests the expected values. If you get them values, great, because that's basically the test. Like, it doesn't test how you wrote the code. It tests, does the code work? And well, there can be arguments that you should learn how to write code certain ways for certain reasons for certain purposes. Here, it's do you understand what the code's doing? And if you understand that, you pass basically. So yeah.
So part of the other thing is I know I'm looking over on the left side and seeing like string operators and some like type and stuff like that. Are there any of the other like koan topics that you think need more help, or you want more help with? And
absolutely. Let me see.
Or
real
just
quick.
throwing out there things that hey, if you're going through, make sure you talk about this, or I don't.
Yeah, fair. So there's a couple things that are like currently in here just as placeholders because I haven't got to them yet. Like for example, let's see, where is this one here? I have it about functions and script blocks, as you've seen. This one here has nothing in it yet because I haven't got to covering it. There's a lot to cover in this one. If anyone wants to have at it, go for it. I would definitely welcome like pull requests on that one because that is a big topic. And even if it's just like it doesn't have to be the whole thing. If you like, hey, I know this part well, I can write this. We can start there, and then I can add to it later. Like it's not like it has to be perfect to start with, obviously. But yeah, like there's like stuff like that. There's a few things. Let me see. I think there's one more like this currently, which is this one here. I have a thing here, which is not quite complete. This looks like a mess, I guarantee it, but it's just part of a test. I don't think this is actually in there yet. No, this isn't actually incorporated into the module yet. This is still a work in progress. There's a few things here that do end up in the koans folder, and you can experiment with them if you like. So they're there in whatever form they are, but they're not incorporated in like the actual assessment until I'm like they're ready for it. There's a few like that. There's this one here, the testing hash tables one. I was like, I want to put some fun little exercise here where it like teaches you how to use hash tables, but it's like a little more of a, for example, this one here. This one is a strictly like testing one. So this gives you a bunch of data, and it's like, hey, write the function that does what we ask of you. So it was going to be kind of one like that. I haven't got around to writing it yet. That's going to be tricky. It's always hard to like write those testing ones. It's especially tricky to write it at kind of like a level that's accessible, but also not easy, because it should be a challenge, you know? But there's things like that kicking about, and I mean, honestly, a lot of these could probably use more fleshing out. These aren't perfect. These aren't probably going to be the final versions completely, and a lot of these, there are probably alternate ways you could do them. There are, you know, like,
so if somebody wanted to get involved and do is it on GitHub and you could submit issues for it? Is that is that the method in which you'd ask people to support it? Or is
Absolutely.
it that, hey, you get me on Twitter and GitHub or Discord, but is GitHub the preferred method to kind of, hey, you know, talk through that, or, you know, offer suggestions? And because I'm thinking some of the, hey, just even a discussion about advanced functions, and like just open an issue and then just kind of talk through the issue, as opposed to, hey, submit this PR and then go back and forth.
Yeah, of course. Like if you wanna discuss it, you're like not sure, like you want some pointers, whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Just come to the issue on the GitHub. If you just want to sort of chat about it for a bit, you're not sure, you wanna really have a solid attack at it yet, you are more than welcome to message me on Twitter. You're more than welcome to come on the PowerShell Discord or Slack or what have you, on even the subreddit if you really want. I'm not there like as often as I am on the Slack and Discord, but if you guys want to come talk about it, 100% open to it, of course. Happy to. It's always kind of fun talking about this, because it's just like such a big topic, and really I'm just like trying to make it as accessible as possible for beginners to really learn some of the harder concepts here. Obviously it starts out with the basics, but then there are like stuff even amongst the basics of PowerShell where it's like it just throws you a curveball, and people coming from like other languages or have never like done programming before and thought they came to grips with it, suddenly they hit this curveball and they're like, what the heck happened? So like it's just
it's such a big language that, you know, you can, you know, totally miss out on something. You're like, oh, and everything about strings. And you're going, no, you don't. And it's just one of those things. So yeah.
My favorite thing is on the subreddit. I don't know why I keep seeing it. Like I see it like I think every 4 to 6 months someone comes along and they're using the match operator, like the equals operator with strings. They're like, oh, it's just equals for strings. It's not, and they'll stumble on that eventually. Like, because eventually you'll hit some special character that like regex thinks is weird, and is like, oh, this is meant to do this, and they're like, what happened? And match is a special one because it has some like variables and stuff too. But yeah, that's
we're getting kind of late in time. Is there so we want to, you know, think about what we can do here?
Yeah, sure. Real quick, let's go through. I think I had nope. I want to mention this before we go, because this one here is something that I think basically everyone should learn when they know PowerShell, because without it, you end up with very messy scripts. This one here is, so this is an example of how some people like to write long lines. So either you have just a really long line. It doesn't look long here because actually VS Code is wrapping this, but if it wasn't wrapping this, you would have a really long line all the way out here. And then, for example, this one here is one where people like to get around it. They try and escape the line break. And a lot of people, like especially newer people, think that this is just a line continuation character. It's actually not. It's an escape character. It's used to escape a lot of things. You know, like you can escape the dollars in a variable to make it not a variable. Weird stuff like that. So what actually happens is, a lot of the time, you end up with someone doing this for line breaks, and they add a space here. And suddenly, now VS Code doesn't like, well, PS Script Analyzer will warn you for that. VS Code will warn you for that. But if you don't have VS Code, you're in the ISE or whatever, because that's, you know, the de facto beginner's tool if you're on Windows, basically. It's just there. So you won't notice that. And suddenly everything breaks. Suddenly you have errors screaming about what the heck are these lines and all that sort of stuff. So it's fragile. If you have a stray space, if you have an extra line break by accident, it's very fragile. So I'm personally really against this. I hated writing this in, but it has to be displayed, so you know what's wrong. And then the way you can do it is actually using PowerShell's hash tables, which are very nice and neat and very lenient in terms of you can just put line breaks in and they'll kind of deal with it most of the time. So you can actually put in values in here. You can put in, for example, this one here, we're starting using a hash table, fill in what's missing. So we've got, oh look, we're getting the, I have to fix that one, but that's fine. Man, I didn't notice I put that in there. Okay, that's got to be fixed. Anyway, there you go. See, I make mistakes too. So many of them. But there you go. That one's going to be fixed. So this one here, we got a path. We got the include, which in this case, you would just copy from here. Boom, boom. The recurse, it mentions, switches. Obviously, when you're calling a command, you just have the switch by name, nothing else. When you're actually splatting, you have to assign it a value specifically. In this case, it's true if you want it to be applied to the command. And this one, depth, would be 2. And then this would work out like this. And instead of calling the splat variable with the regular $ sign there, you call it with the @ symbol to indicate that it's splatting. Quick mention then, real quick, is you can do this with arrays too. It's a little trickier and it only works with strictly positional parameters. So like, for example, get child item, you can pass the path and I think the filter by position. So if you just gave it an array like this, if you gave it like this one, for example, if you did this, don't, but if you did this, like this, and then your second value was like this, oops. If you gave it this array and you told it to splat this, oops, I got an equal sign there, and then it would just be like, oh, this is your path, this is your filter. Okay, cool, let's go. So arrays do work. Generally speaking, I would only use them for you know, running a native command, like, you know, if you're calling the dir command on Windows or whatever, which is actually get child item. But if you're calling, like, for example, this random executable, you can splat to that as well to make things a little neater in your code if the command call is getting really long. So that's a fun one. But splatting is just something that I think a lot of beginners kind of end up missing because it's not always mentioned when you're first starting, but it helps you make a lot neater and a lot more robust scripts as well. So that's something I wanted to point out. But yeah, that's more or less, I mean, it's not a complete review. There's a whole bunch of stuff here, but that'll probably do us for now, I think. If you want to, you know, come chat in the PowerShell Discord or Slack, I'm definitely around for a while yet. And yeah, but thank you guys for having me. And obviously, if you guys need a hand with this or you want to help out, more than welcome. You can actually, let me just quickly page back to the intro one here. I'll give you guys the link here as well for the GitHub. So the GitHub here is actually just here, github.com, and I'm Vexo2 on GitHub as well, and PSKoans is right there. And as mentioned, you know, you can submit a PR, submit an issue if you want to talk about it, or just come hang out in the Slack anytime. I end up helping out a lot of people in the Slack, so if you need a hand, I'm there.
Well, yeah, certainly. You know, I think it's clearly, I think everybody who's on here right now can clearly understand that this is, you can go very deep in this, and this is a really great product and a great, and I'm, I think I'm very thankful that this is there because I think I get some value out of it. You know, I've been doing this for quite a long time, and I can certainly see some things that, hey, that's interesting. I didn't think about that, and so I think a lot of people can get a lot of value out of this, and I think it's very deep as well. And also, people don't be afraid of it, and you can take it step by step, and that's what koans is all about.
Yeah.
The self-enlightenment, and you just ask yourself the koan, and eventually you'll come to that exact enlightenment.
It's funny you mention that because that's like the origin of the koan's name and like where it came from. Like, as I kind of briefly mentioned in the beginning, it comes from Ruby. But before that, like before it was a programming thing, it came from I believe it was like Tibetan Buddhist monks or something, and it was basically like these pupils were given these literally unsolvable problems, or like if you were to attack it logically, that there isn't a solution that really means anything, and basically they would just force them to meditate on it for like days and weeks and months until they like made that intuitive leap to the solution they were looking for. And so like literally it evolved out of people banging their heads on a wall until they figured it out. So there you go.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, certainly thank you, Joel, for coming and showing, certainly enlightening so many of us, and but also don't be afraid of it, and don't be afraid to even ask questions. I know,
of course, yeah.
As you said, you've certainly awarded today, yesterday, and I certainly think that you're going to offer up that support. And there are certainly people in the community overall, especially within the Raleigh group, that will certainly help you where we can. And
cheers.
Just got to ask the question. It can be enlightening.
Of course, yeah. Oh, one thing I do want to mention before we go real quick is if you haven't watched the most recent or heard the most recent Power Scripting podcast, you really should. Don Jones is awesome, and that topic is so good. He talks a lot about, just one thing I want to mention really quick is he talks about the subject of mastery, and I've been thinking about that for so long. Like, I've often found, at least for myself, that like you learn better through teaching someone else, and that's like literally how I learned PowerShell. I would like bang my head on a wall for a couple of weeks, like watching people stumble across the same thing, being like, how the heck does this work? And like watching other people come and be like, hey, this is how this works. And I'd learn like that. And then I'd go back and teach someone else, and I'd learn it more thoroughly. And Don Jones in that podcast mentions like never be afraid to turn around and help someone else. Never think that like, oh, I haven't gotten far enough to teach this. I haven't gotten far enough. I'm not good enough for this, because you get good by the teaching, which I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you only truly understand it when you can teach it again.
Exactly.
Because you can turn it around and be able to communicate that answer back out to somebody else in an efficient way, in which they can understand it.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you just learn it for yourself, you learn it enough to get by. If you have to learn it to teach someone else, you'll usually try really hard to learn it properly because you want to give them the right information.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. Ken, thanks, Joel. And
thank you, guys.
And we'll see everybody in 2 weeks in Raleigh. Same location. Watch the meetup.